For us, every single role we put out there, we get around 1,000 applicants, and probably only about 50 of them have the relevant experience. It's hard to find these people who really understand data, but then can also communicate the data. And can't just depersonalize them and turn them into a robot, just before we recruit. If you're just sat there not present with your headphones in and you don't see the value in relationships, you're never going to get those opportunities. So if you want to be like those people, you need to act like those people.
When you think about hiring right now in the current market, what are the biggest challenges that spring to mind to you?
One big challenge is the sheer number of applications you get, and being able to get through, obviously, all the CVs and make sure you're not missing out on like a relevant person. Particularly, you work for a brand like Formula E, which is a global brand. People are very excited by travel and working for a global company. You tend to get a lot of just people who probably aren't relevant. So, for us, every single role we put out there, we get around 1,000 applicants, and probably only about 50 of them have the relevant experience, even though you make it very clear on the advert what that experience requirement is. I think for us, it's just getting through all that is a challenge. And then I think on top of that, just also, there's a bit of a minefield with like eligibility as well to work. You get people from all over the world applying as well, and not everyone has the right to work in the UK. And obviously, if you don't have the right to work, you have to pay quite a lot of money for a visa process. And the reality is that the kind of roles that we're applying for, we're not going to probably pay for someone to come on a visa, unfortunately. So there's a bit of that as well, and trying to get through understanding who's actually eligible as well. But yeah, once we get to the actual interview process, I don't think we have too many challenges, because I think at that stage we've got the right people on the right shortlist, and we're able to sort of weed out the best candidate. But I think it's just getting to that stage is the biggest challenge that we have.
I'm hearing the application volumes a lot recently. Is that something that's like you've noticed an increase in the last year or two, or has that always been an issue?
No, it's definitely increased. I think it's the rise of things like LinkedIn and, companies not using, like including ourselves, actually moving away from using recruiters. And even in my world, where it's data analytics, it's quite a specialism. And traditionally we've shied away from LinkedIn, because if you just use LinkedIn, you have that problem like I just said, which you get thousands of applications of non-relevant people. But obviously with cost savings required across the business, and recruiters cost a lot of money, a lot of companies are moving towards that kind of using LinkedIn to try to save money and budget. I think that ultimately leads to that's been quite a big shift. I think I've certainly noticed there seems to be fewer recruiters out there than there were a few years back. And actually, even myself, a few years ago, I'd be constantly contacted by recruitment people, and actually I don't notice that happens as much anymore. And I'm guessing it's just because there's not as many roles out there with recruiters as before. Now they're all on kind of LinkedIn or other job sites.
Right. So maybe companies are going it alone more, doing their own sourcing, getting that inbound set of talent rather than a hand-picked couple of candidates where the recruiter's already done all that work and kind of hidden the screening problem from you almost.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the same. But often what happens with us sometimes is, particularly at one stage, I think when I joined Formula, I had 3 quite senior roles open, and the LinkedIn applications were just terrible. And whilst we did look for about a month or 2, we ended up going with recruiters for all 3. This was about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. And so I think, and actually there's another role in CRM at Formula E at the moment, which was with LinkedIn, but has now gone to a recruiter, just because sometimes I think in those really specialist roles, it's just not possible to find sometimes via LinkedIn, because you need that recruiter who knows that market, who can find the people who may not be looking on LinkedIn and finding that role and actually weeding those people out. So I think in our world, sometimes we want to go LinkedIn to save money, but then we end up going with a recruiter anyway, and we just what that means is wasted time, and we don't have that person as well, which is frustrating.
Yeah. And I wonder whether also, like if I think about companies when they're making the recruiter versus DIY choice, the cost of recruiter is very clear. It's like whatever X% of this person's salary. It's very, very obvious, but the opportunity cost of doing it yourself, maybe not as clear. You'd have to think about like, how long are we going to spend reading CVs, creating our own job ad, like, I think that cost comparison isn't quite obvious.
Yeah, we don't. No one. I mean, I've never worked at a company where someone said, right, okay, tally up all the hours that you spend on recruitment, that and then put that against your salary cost, and then work out how many other people in your team get involved. Yeah. Also, when you have interview process, you might have 3 interviews, one with a junior member of staff, but you might have one where you bring someone senior in, and they cost money as well. That's an hour out of their time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right. I think I've never in 20 odd years had that. Can you actually sum up how much it costs you to recruit internally? Because I'm sure once you add all those numbers up, it's not a million miles away from what the recruiter cost would be anyway.
Okay, so dealing with high volume of applicants, you mentioned though that basically once you've gone past that screening challenge, once you've actually got the candidate in the room, you feel like from that point forward, it's reasonably smooth sailing. Is there anything from that point forward that it is sticking out as a challenge?
I think in our world, in the sort of data analytics world, you know when you know. It's a really weird one. Like always within about 5 minutes, I often like kind of know if someone's the right person or the wrong person. I don't know. I think it's such a specialism that not many people work in, and the part of a lot of our role is not just the kind of like nerdy looking at spreadsheets and building big data sheets, but it's actually being able to tell the story of the data and actually talk to people and try and show what that data mean, and then how people should change and how we can improve the business off the back of that data. And a lot of people fall apart on the second bit. So they come in and they're clearly very smart individuals. They know their stuff. They know how to use different coding programs or whatever. But they just can't, the way they are even presenting themselves at interview, you're a bit like, I could never put this person in front of the CEO. I could never put this person in front of the CMO or whoever, our key stakeholders. And so sometimes immediately, because you can kind of go, I don't think this person is right, regardless of their technical skills. But then, then often the opposite thing happens as well, where within 5 minutes, you're like, I absolutely love this person. I think this person's fantastic. So I tend to be quite good at kind of knowing within 10 minutes if someone's right or wrong. But I mean, there have been some people who I haven't thought were amazing at the beginning. They have won me over through the interview, but that happens relatively rarely. It's often I think those first 10 minutes are really key for anyone interviewing to make a good impression. So I think a lot of people when they're recruiting, they do kind of form a view very quickly within sort of 10 or 15 minutes. And I've had times where I've had to sit there for another 50, 45 minutes with someone who has not been right at all. But I've been courteous and given them a chance to speak and make their case, but you've kind of known in your heart of hearts that they're not the right person. But you don't want to kind of rudely go, I'm sorry, you're not right. Let's just terminate this interview now. Although some people might like that honesty, but I think there's a bit of courtesy there as well.
Can you think of anyone though who you interviewed and you were like, oh yeah, definite yes, but then they turned out to be not the right fit at all? Like, can you experience an initial reaction being off?
Only one person, and I'm clearly not going to say what job or where or but in my 20-year career, there was one person who managed to not only kind of dupe me, but dupe about 3 other people within the business who were like, this person is fantastic. And then they worked for us, and they just weren't great from the outset, and they kind of got progressively worse as their tenure went by, and then we were kind of quite glad when actually they left after not a long time. But it was slightly a bit of a hit on the kind of the confidence levels, because I think I've always prided myself on being able to know and get the right people, and often, obviously, without wanting to sort of blow your own trumpet, I often get people always say, oh yeah, you got a great team, your team's really good. And I've had that quite a lot through my career, people saying that. And I've always been, that's because I'm good at recruiting people, I get the right people. But yeah, this one person threw me, and it was a bit of I just don't understand how I was duped, because normally I can sort of weed out the things that this person just does wrong from day one in the interview process. But he managed to dupe me and about 3 other people. And yeah, sorry, I just said his gender, but anyway, it was a long time ago now. So there you go. No, I don't think anyone can work out who it is from that.
And your approach to hiring, your philosophy, because we chatted before, is probably more on the intuitive side of the spectrum rather than the data-driven side of the spectrum. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah, because I think by the time, I guess on my level now, I've got a stage where often, unless it's someone recruiting within, I'm recruiting for within my team, like a direct report of mine, often below the direct report level, it's obviously the hiring managers, and they kind of bring that person to me at the very end. So by that time, I'm kind of, there's a lot of trust there with the rest of my team that they've actually hired the right people, right? That they put the right people in front of me who've got those technical skills and who are right. So I guess, now I'm probably a little bit like that, but probably, when it's someone in one of, maybe a senior manager or senior person in my team, then yes, I would at that stage go, actually, just check. I just need to check you have the right technical skills. And we have a series of kind of sort of technical sort of standard questions that we have in HR. I've got a few questions around like standard behaviors of the business and stuff that I might ask just to kind of double check that they're the right fit for the business. But often, as I say, most people, when they get to me, they've already been seen by 2-3 different people, and they're generally the kind of right people in terms of the technical side. And I'm just trying to, often actually my team will come to me and go, right, we're down to the final 2 and we can't quite choose between the final 2. So can you have a chat with both of them? And then, so that intuition does kind of come in there, I guess. But I think it's been a good 2.5 years since I actually recruited for someone who directly reports into me. So it's been a while now. But so since then I've had about 7 or 8 people just come to me for that final tick box of, is this person right? And can you just check we've not made a mistake?
For the candidates who then get to that final, like almost sanity check stage with you, have you noticed a common reason why they would fall down? Because you're kind of you're taking their technical skills that are given, by it sounds like, then, because your team has done that. Like, is there a recurring pattern?
Well, there's only one. I guess I have a coach. We had this coaching program at Formulary. So all the leaders have a kind of personal coach. So I have like a monthly session with her. And she said one danger that a lot of people do is you kind of recruit in your image. So I'm generally quite a relationshipy sort of person who likes to talk to people and feel quite confident to talk to people and get on with people and build relationships relatively well. So I always, in her mind, it's like you always then look for someone who also is like you, which is probably that intuition side where sometimes if someone comes across confident, they might be more favorable to me to someone who maybe is a bit more shy and nervous and doesn't put their point across quite so well. So, which I think is a fair criticism. I think in our world, it is important to have a team where it's a balanced team, not just everybody is like just got the gift of the gab and can talk, but you need some people who can actually do the doing. And we have had an okay balance where we have had people on our team who have been more analyst types who maybe haven't been quite so client facing. But there was one time where I had someone in my team put forward like 2 candidates for me. And one was the more technical person and one was more the kind of relationship person. But the technical person, it was so painful from the first minute of that chat. And probably went against everything that my coach told me in terms of, you need to think about what your requirements for your team are and not just recruit on your kind of in your form, as it were. But this person was so labored and long-winded in their answers and so uninspiring and bored me within about 5 seconds of the minute they opened their mouth. And I was just like, I can't have this person working for me. I can't do it. So I think probably as a result, I think if the role is more of an analyst or more data mining role or someone who isn't client facing, what I'd probably do is let the hiring manager, because they would know what kind of person they need. I let the hiring manager in my team, because those people are unlikely ever to report into me now, because those people tend to, the people, they're kind of at the bottom of the food chain, the people who do the number crunching to pass on to the next level up, who then take it to the CEO or whatever. So they're unlikely to be reporting into me. So now what I would probably do is let the hiring manager essentially choose that right person, then maybe only give me one candidate at the end and just explain that this role is a technical role. And then I would have to kind of go, you know what, that maybe this person isn't the most chatty person in the world, but they know their stuff, and that's the important bit. And I think that's it. So I think I don't probably need to be quite as involved in that technical side now, that more. And actually the technical people tend to be the more junior people now, because I think as you become a senior manager or a head of or a director, your role becomes more management than necessarily the day-to-day technical doing of the project. So, yeah.
In that example where basically two candidates got to the end of the process, one was, let's say, on the more technical side of the spectrum, one was on the more communication-y, softy, human-y side of the spectrum. Was it the case that, your criteria of what you were looking for in that role was not necessarily the same as the hiring manager, such that you would end up with two such different candidates at the end, one of whom you thought was like a hard no?
Yeah. I think the hiring manager thought that we had too many people of a certain type in the team and we needed to think down the other route. But actually, I mean, my point to the hiring manager was that even if that were the case, this person wasn't the right person. Like they needed to have some, and it's hard. It's hard to find these people who can do both, right? Who really understand data, but then can also communicate the data. And but this person was so weak on that second part for someone of that level as well, as a manager level. I was just like, even if that were the case, this person isn't the right person. And I could never put, I would need this manager level to sometimes be in front of senior people, and I could never put this person in front of a senior person. And that's my kind of benchmark, that I need someone who can do that. And and given that I'm in the industry and I was playing bored by them, and our work is not necessarily the most exciting. We talk about numbers the whole time. It's not the most thrilling. That we need to have someone who's able to talk about numbers in a way that's that commands the room or commands the people. And if they couldn't command someone in the same industry like me, then they're not going to be able to command someone out from outside of our industry. So they just weren't right.
Yeah, and I mean that's fair enough, isn't it? That's just like a fundamental component of the role that they need to have. Then to me, that's more just that's the evaluation criteria, as opposed to you bringing in your bias where you're sort of always selecting for the opposite of that. Like it's just a requirement of the role at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, I think I basically said, I think the other person is great and I liked that person. You are welcome to take my advice and recruit that person, or you can come back to me with another person who's technical who you think is a good person case, but that person isn't the right person.
Yeah. Changing topics a little bit. So ChatGPT's been out for 23 months now, something like that. AI's all anyone ever hears about it, or any kind of data conference, that's for sure, or anywhere else in the world. How do you feel as though it's impacted hiring so far from what you can see, either on the candidate side of things or the company side of things?
Yeah, I mean, going back to that, what we discussed earlier around the kind of millions of applications that you get for every single role that you put out there, I think we are about to I think we are just about to embark on using AI a bit more to help sift through those LinkedIn sort of applications and, program those sort of buzzwords and things that we'd be looking for, as well as, simple kind of like education levels or university degree levels or whatever. So that's something that is being trialed, I think, by our HR team at the moment. I think that's going to go into place where we can start then, maybe that 1,000 then becomes 100 or becomes 50, and that will really help us get those numbers down without us having to go through every single one. And actually, it takes away a little bit of that human error that you might miss when you go through every single one, which I have done before, some of the roles, and I've had like 700-800, and all you do is skim through and you just look at the very first line and go, no, yet, no, yet, no, yet, yeah, and you just whiz through it as quickly as you can. But at least with AI, you can program that robot to look up certain degrees that people have done, plus certain work experiences, certain words that have been mentioned, like, I don't know, quantitative research or qualitative research or insight or whatever. So I think it's going to be an interesting use for us and might take away some of that, your very first question, which is what are some of the like issues around recruitment, and AI could be a good use case where it might actually help us with those issues.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like CV screening is so flawed in so many ways. One is, yeah, it's obviously rife for bias if the CV's got name, gender, ethnicity. In some markets, people put their photo, their religion, their caste is quite common in India. When we hire there, it's like everything is on that CV. So yeah, in theory, taking out of the hands of a human and putting into a more consistent AI approach that doesn't get bored after 10 minutes because they've just read 50 bloody CVs could help a lot.
Yeah, it could do. Formula E is also doing a taking off, so they're trying something else in that when we get our CVs through of the, say, the 50 candidates, whatever that are chosen by the HR team or whoever's weeding through those data or those CVs, taking off their name, so you can't work out their gender, but also taking off what university they went to. So we'll have like the course they did, but not with. So basically, take away our bias as well. So like that we want a man or a woman, or that we want someone from a certain university or something like that. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting trial as well. And yeah, I'm not 100% sure where I stand on that, but it's going to be an interesting trial. I'm on the fence just because I don't think I ever do. I don't bias towards certain universities. Don't think I have done, but I also like to know as well because I feel like it adds a little bit to the application. But so I'm a little bit kind of like, I don't know how I quite feel about that, not knowing where they went to university, but I'm sure it's something that I get used to, and I'm sure it's something that a lot of companies are doing as well to take away that kind of bias you might have because someone went to Oxford or Cambridge or whatever.
Yeah, it's hard to, well, sorry, it's impossible to remove. And I guess if there's all these unconscious biases we don't even know about, I mean, who knows? And if you have access to that data, who knows what your brain's doing with it? You could argue. I always thought that about the hobbies section, but then plenty of people say, oh, I'd like to see the hobbies because it gives me an insight into what they do outside of work, and are they a real person? And, are they the sort of person I want to have a beer with, and that kind of vibe check. What do you think about hobbies?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I think we need to be careful that we need to these people are human beings at the end of it. We can't just depersonalize them and turn them into a robot, just before we recruit. So I think I agree with you. I quite like to know the person. And actually sometimes I have, getting to your previous thing about this person who duped us before, I've had another one who didn't dupe me at an interview, but his CV was incredible. And it was like sport, analytics and sport, amazing. Hobbies, like keen runner, like, which I run a lot, obviously, doing like keen traveler, doing loads of things that I was like, these are really good. This guy seems like amazing. But then when the interview came, it was like pulling teeth within about 2 minutes. I was like, oh my God, this is painful. This person can't even look up. He's like sweating. He couldn't even like look me in the eye. It was like, so yeah, I've had that situation as well, where a CV has been immaculate and perfect, and then the person comes and you have a preconceived view of what this person's going to be like. Oh, this person's going to be amazing. He's going to be our candidate, and then you're disappointed because they're just like nothing like this preconceived person that you've formed in your head.
Yes, they've almost done themselves an injustice. They would have been better off pitching their CV a little bit lower because you would have been less disappointed and somehow almost happier, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What about on the other side of the table, as a candidate of your career? Any particularly unusual, negative, or memorable experiences you've had on that side of the table?
It's a really weird one because I think we talked about this when I saw you in person, that how as you get more senior, the processes seem to get easier, which is really bizarre. Like you kind of, someone earning 30,000 and it's their like second ever job in 1 year experience. You do 5 stages of interviews and they have to see like everyone in the business, everyone has to agree that person's the right person. Yet sometimes I've had jobs where I've got a head of role or a director role off the back of a coffee, with someone, which is, it's just madness to think that companies invest so much in that junior level in recruitment, but sometimes they just, you get more senior and they give someone a job basically without any kind of process. And that didn't happen to me at Formula E. I did go through a process of Formula E, but I certainly know at Formula One, I was just given the job basically, like because of connections I had with the MD there, and also like at Sky, it was pretty much a coffee in McDonald's at Victoria train station. I remember very vividly that kind of like discussion. So I don't have any like experiences from within the interview where I was like, oh my God, that was weird. Or because you have to say, I probably haven't really, I had a couple of interviews for Formula E, but again, it was like with people, I knew people already because it's such a small industry. When you start getting to my level and you're 20 years in, it's likely the people that you interview with, you're going to know anyway. So you've already got a bit of friendly kind of relationships with them. So it's more of a chat rather than a formal process. So it's kind of like they know you and they know your past and they know what you could probably offer. And so yeah, I think that's my weird take as a kind of senior person, is that I probably haven't had a proper formal interview of someone I haven't known for a long time, like 10 years maybe, like even, and I've just kind of not just walked into jobs, but that process has been relatively limited compared to some of the processes back in when I was a manager level and I had 4 years experience or 5 years experience, where you'd have 3 or 4 stage processes. So that I find that very, very, very interesting. But yeah, nothing that I can remember. It's a long time ago now. I was a young man last time I had an interview, proper interview. So yeah, no, nothing kind of stands out as I remember like a few jobs applying for some jobs back in the day where, I had a great CV, I had some good sports experience, I could speak a couple of languages, I did French and German at university, and there were jobs like where they needed someone with experience in data and analytics and research who could speak a language, and I never even got an interview, and that really annoyed me. I remember that a few processes where I didn't even get an interview, and I was like, I just don't understand why. Clearly I've got the right experience and clearly I've got the language side. But anyway, it's a long time ago now. You can't be bitter about those kind of things. But nothing too major other than that.
The lack of negative experience in itself is interesting. And the fact that like your only real negative experience was when you're maybe more junior, applying directly, going into the same bucket as hundreds of other candidates, getting filtered out in some bullshit process. Whereas for the past 10 years, you've relied on your networks, your experience, your knowledge in the industry to really leverage that. That's a great insight for candidates at the junior or mid-level then to think, where do I need to get to by the time I'm not shit fighting it out with everyone else on the street for the job that I want, if you see what I mean?
Also, I've had like people come and work for me over the year, like a few people who have, they've just bypassed the relationship bit and they've just focused, like they sat there at their desks for 3 years with their headphones on, just doing presentations or doing work. They're not really present in the room. Yeah, you want to ask them the question and they've got their headphones in and you kind of go, well, I can't get this person's attention. They've sat there listening to music all day long. And they're just ignoring the relationship bit. And I think that bit is so, so important. I had one person at like F1 who kind of was like, oh, I'm not going to come to the meeting with Red Bull today because I'm not going to be doing a presentation and I don't see the point of just sat there when I've got a long job list. And it's like, because it's a relationship meeting, Red Bull, one of the most important teams in the industry, blah, 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 blah. But that person didn't see the importance of building the network and the relationship. So I guess, yeah, you're right. One bit of advice is don't neglect the relationship bit. Don't sit there with your headphones in at work all day long, meet people, get to know people, because 4 years later, I didn't know that at ESPN, the guy who was a big boss of our department, that 7 years later, he had become the commercial MD of Formula One and would call upon me to come and join him. And And then I didn't know that when I was at Sky, I didn't know the COO, the now COO of Formula E would come calling to me because she would need someone, but I built a relationship with those people at the time. If you're just sat there not present with your headphones in and you don't see the value in relationships, you're never going to get those opportunities. So I think absolutely, and also remember when you apply for jobs, people talk, right? It's often our industries, regardless, I don't know which other industries people who listen to this are from, that people talk, and industries are small. And particularly in the sports world, people will go, "Oh, Matt, do you know this person?" Actually, I was at a wedding on Saturday night talking to someone, and someone's like, "Oh, actually, someone mentioned you in an interview who's interviewing for a role at where that person worked. And you worked with them at F1 a few years ago, and what was she like?" And I had to give my opinion on that person at that moment and go, yeah, it was good at this, but not quite so good at this. But if you're looking for someone who does this, she's great. But if you want someone to do this, she's not as great. So, and that person was like, great, that sums up what I got from the interview, is that's how I saw this person. So it's good. But what people don't realize is the importance of relationships, that people talk and people know other people in the industry. And often you get little side notes, like I do all the time, where people go, "Oh, I interviewed so-and-so for a job, any good, yes or no?" And if that person has made a good impression on you, you absolutely will write back and go, "Amazing, take them." But if it's the other way around, you might go, "Yeah, I don't want to throw people under the bus, but I have sort of said, not sure that person is right for you," or I would be careful because of X, Y, and Z, or I would be careful. And that doesn't good. You want someone to say you're great. You don't want someone to say, be careful because of this. So I think a bit of advice to people.
I think that's a great insight you've given, because the current narrative, like if you were just to trawl through LinkedIn every day from a canvas perspective, I think there's an increasing level of distrust in the system, increasing level of paranoia that everything's kind of against them, especially when they're applying for jobs. They feel like they're competing with thousands of people. And they'll probably look at your experience and go, "Oh, well, Matt was really lucky that he got these jobs." But that's the wrong takeaway, because it's you putting in the hard work for years consistently to build the relationships to then get the quote unquote luck 20 years later. It's not really luck though, is it?
No, yeah, right. Yeah, I know I have said to people, I guess I've been really lucky. And actually people have said to me, "No, you haven't. You've played the game well. Ultimately, it's a game." It's clearly it's people's life for 40 years, but the corporate world is a game. Like you build those relationships, you generate your own luck by the people that you meet along the way. And if you're just sat there not present, and you're not talking to people, and you're sat with your headphones on, sorry, you can tell I've got a massive gripe about headphones. I just don't understand people who sit at work with their headphones on all day. I just don't get it. But I get people argue with me all the time about this and say that they need the headspace and all that sort of stuff. But I'm like, do that at home when you're at home. But when you're in the office, you need to be present. And I think, but it's such a young person thing now. They all sit with headphones on, and I'm just like, you're not. How will you meet the leader? How are you going to? What if the CEO walks past and would you say, if he said he started speaking to you, you wouldn't be able to hear him because you got your headphones in, or and also look at those leaders of your business. Look at the C-suite. Look at the directors, the VP. Not one of them has their headphones on when they're working. So if you want to be like those people, you need to act like those people. But anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And I even noticed this myself from my own life. Like I don't know when this started, but at some point, if I'd go out for lunch to a cafe, at some point I converted to looking on my iPad with earbuds in, watching football or whatever. That wasn't the case 3 years ago or 5 years ago at some point. I think it just slips in without you even noticing. And I think the narrative is all about let's make everyone as comfortable as possible, reduce anxiety, de-stress. But no one's talking about the other side of it. Is like, yeah, you've got your back to people in an office and they can't talk to you. You're missing out on so much. You blocked out the noise. You've also blocked out all the good stuff, I guess.
Yeah. What did we do like 30 years ago, 20 years ago, when there were no phones and no internet to listen to every song that was ever made? You just had to sit there and listen to the noise of just enjoy the moment, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Okay. What about on the side of objectivity? So this show is going to be called basically objective hiring. Have you seen any approaches in your business or in previous companies. They've tried to make the hiring process a bit more objective, a bit fairer.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's a little bit like what I talked about already around the kind of the new thing. We're creating a kind of a job site where all of our roles are going to be on there, and yeah, degendering, taking out university, just so that people can like, yeah, we can take away some of those sort of subconscious biases that we might have. And so I think that's the first move probably Formula E has, to try and make things a little bit fairer. But there's also, when I first started at Formula E, you would just, as a hiring manager, could interview that person a couple of times and you could decide yes or no. But now you have to have someone from another team, a senior person, another team, come in at the final stage to kind of rubber stamp as well. So it's not just you're kind of me just you're recruiting people in my image, right? So that someone else can go, yeah, I love this person. This person's great, and and often we'll bring in one of the stakeholder team people as well. So some of that person would actually be working for sort of day to day. That's some of the stuff that Formula E is doing. I think we are, actually, as a business, we have almost exactly 50-50 men women split, which for a sports business is unheard of, which is pretty good. I think we have a decent we like quite a decent number of like international people. It's a very diverse business. I think we over index for sort of people from people from other ethnic groups working for Formula E and different nationalities. So I think already we're doing pretty well on that kind of EDI sort of stuff, but we can still do better on particularly in things like the background of people work with. I saw some stats where massively over-indexing people going to like private schools and probably people from like quite middle upper class backgrounds. So and I think something for lots of businesses, particularly in the UK, like how can they positively encourage people who maybe haven't come from that background to apply for jobs? Then that's something that we're looking at the moment as well.
Is that something currently possible? Like, do you need, I don't know, a degree requirement to apply for any of the roles at Formula E?
I mean, I guess yes, and I think that's probably a little bit why we want to take out the university name, just so that often the view is that it's easier if you're from a privileged background and you're from a private school or you're from a middle upper class background, you tend to more likely to be accepted for like an Oxford, Cambridge, one of the bigger universities. So if you just keep recruiting people from those universities, you're just recruiting the same upper and middle class people. So if you take out the university name, people from lowering sort of classes do go to university now, right? A lot of people do go to university. So actually take out the university name, then you're more likely to get a bigger mix of people applying for jobs. And at least that someone who maybe comes from another background who maybe didn't go to an amazing school, but since they've been at university, they've flourished and they've become a great, they've caught up, I guess, with the kind of private school kids, gives them a chance to actually to be in the mix and be part of the kind of process. Whereas before you might have weeded them out because you went, well, Leicester University isn't a great university. I don't know. I'd rather have that person from Bristol or something. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a part of that. So I think we're trying to think about ways that we can improve that and that kind of social mobility sort of point. And I think that's the area that we've still got a little bit of work to be done.
I would have thought for an area like data and BI, I mean, degrees didn't really exist until maybe 2017 or 18. And so much of people in data are self-taught. Me, like I studied business and then somehow transitioned into data. Would you consider no degree at all? Like, why require any degree?
No, that's fair. And I mean, I did French and German at university, so I didn't even have any numbers in my degree. So sort of fell into it. I don't know how it happened, but yeah, you're right. And a lot of people, the more senior people in the industry, did just fall into it, and we all did degree. I spoke to someone the other day who did a degree in like anatomy, and suddenly they're like into head of data, compare the market, like whatever. There are weird, wonderful backgrounds of this industry. So yeah, I, I think there's something though around, I don't know, maybe this is my unconscious bias now coming out, but I think there's something about degrees in that I feel like it's taught someone to how to sort of manage, like our world, right? Often we're often support teams. We're like an agency within clients, or we work for an agency, and we are dealing with tons of different requests at the same time, tons of different projects, blah, blah, blah. We're having to have our finger in multiple pies, and there's some kind of link there between when you go to university and you have multiple classes, projects, essays to write, modules to do, whatever, that I think is a really good grounding for the work that we do. Like, we don't just work on one project for 8 weeks and then move on to the next one. Sometimes our job list is 20, 30 things. And I think, to me, and I think someone who hasn't gone to university, and I'm not judging that person, because that person might have gone to work. And there have been people in my industry who I've known who are quite senior now, who didn't go to university. And they say, actually, they went out at 18 and they learned a trade from scratch. And I think that's also an admirable thing to have done. And I think there are some people out there, but I think there's also a bit of the opposite side, where people have learned how to multitask and do multiple things. I think there is an element of that at university as well, which is really central to our job in the kind of support function, that is probably a reason why I would tend to prefer. But I say, we interviewed someone the other week who had gone to university, but they quit after a year. But we didn't stop interviewing him. He was, and actually he was our preferred candidate, but we had to cut the role in the end. But so yeah, I'm not saying I wouldn't ever recruit somebody who doesn't have a university degree. I just think it gives you quite a nice grounding for our industry. But equally, this person didn't have a full degree. They had 1 year and then they quit, but they went out to work, and they had a very kind of sort of colorful CV from different areas, and, good agency background, and were kind of relevant to the role that we needed. So yeah, I think you can do it both ways. I just think it's probably harder the other way. And going back to a previous point around AI and stuff, I think a lot of big businesses, so the Skies of this world, the BTs of this world, Disney's, places that I've worked before, I think their AI robot will be discount anyone with no degree. I just think it's just an easy way to weed out a certain number of people. And I know from recruiting at Sky that they weeded people out with no degrees, particularly for those more junior roles, right? I think it's different if you're kind of going into a director role and someone's got 20 years experience. That those people, you wouldn't even look at their degree, because you'd look at their experience. But those people going for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year experience jobs, then those people may be punished if they haven't been to university.
Yeah, I feel like if it's a super junior role, all you've got is a CV, you've got 1,000 of them, and you have to come up with some rule to decide which to shortlist. You have to use something, years of experience. Do they have a degree? What degree is it? What was their weighted average mark or something? I just feel like beyond that, like if you interviewed someone and they've just destroyed the interview, and you've given them a technical test, they've destroyed that, and you get along with them, what does the degree they did 10 years ago matter in some sense?
Yeah, that doesn't. Yeah, no, 100% agree. Yeah.
What about, are there any particular bits of hiring that you think could be improved using data specifically, like new kind of metrics that we're not looking at the moment, or new data sets that we don't have access to currently, or anything like that?
I'm not sure really on our side. I kind of, not really is my honest answer. I mean, going back to this interview where I got the kind of technical and a non-technical person, that the hiring manager then had tried very much to do that as a very meticulous hiring process, where they'd had a test, which is fine, but then they'd been scored across every single metric. And she had put in a scoring process to score the candidates. And yeah, I thought that was quite a nice, I mean, I say, I've always been such an intuitive hirer that I've never done that before, but this person was very sort of actually very data analytical, like every sort of area got a score, and it kind of threw up these two candidates as the two best candidates for the role. And I think that could be interesting. That could be a way that we might take forward and do more of a scoring kind of process for some roles, maybe in more junior roles, but other than that, not really, I think particularly.
I'm interested in this example then. So these two candidates got to the end. One, in your view, had reasonably weak communication skills. They'd previously gone through other stages and been scored. Now, was it that they weren't scored on communication at all, like it wasn't a criteria, or was it they were scored but higher, so someone just had a different opinion? Like, where was the gap, do you think?
I think didn't score as well in that, but I mean, it's a bit of a weird one actually. I mean, part of it as well was also language. This person was a foreign national, but the English was very broken, but she was from this person from like a Chinese background, and quickly not a problem at all, and not anything that would be an issue. But I couldn't really understand sometimes her English. It wasn't fantastic. But the person who was a hiring manager, her family was from a Chinese background, so she understood very well because she was used to that kind of. So that's just an example where, so to her, the communication wasn't as difficult as it was for me, if you know what I mean. It's a bit of a weird situation, and I think so. Maybe you're right. Maybe she scored higher on the other scoring criteria, and I would have scored less because I couldn't. The English was a little bit broken. And yeah, so basically, but also I think actually on that is an interesting point. I think if you are going to do these scoring things, you need to probably weight the things that are the most important. So if you actually like, I want this person needs to be in front of the CMO presenting data and insight and their opinions, like communication is one of the most important things. So actually that should have a weight of 5. Whereas if they're able to use, SQL, which we might have to do once every 6 months, that has a weight of 1 because it's not as important as a 5, whatever, like those kind of things. So maybe that's where we kind of went wrong, I guess, on that point.
Yep. Okay. One final question. Do you have a hiring hero, like anyone throughout your career you've looked at and gone, oh, well, they did a really good job, or they gave you a new insight about hiring or a new way of thinking about it at all?
Not really. I think I probably like my boss at F1, who I talked about before, the one that the ND commercial that he's probably like where I've got my kind of intuition hiring from, because that was very much his style. Like he'd always say to me he'd know within like 1 minute if they were the right person or not, and often was like, I don't need to do a second, third process. I know this person's right. And I think I've probably inherited a little bit of that from him. But equally, like, if you look at the people he hired and the team that he had at F1, it was an incredibly capable team from great backgrounds. And part of that was actually probably not, obviously the year of F1 is big from, most people wouldn't want to turn that job down, right? But equally the lure of him, because he was such an inspirational leader that people wanted to work for him. And a lot of people worked for him before and they wanted to work for him again, right? So it was like I want to work for you again kind of. I'll say, I think he was like inspirational in, yes, hiring, but also just generally as a person. And that made him, I think it's important when you turn up for an interview to actually like, that you see that person and you're in awe of that person in some ways, because you want to work for them and you're impressed by that person and you've seen their CV and you've seen their experience, and it certainly makes a job interview more appealing, I guess, in some ways, that you want to work for that person. So yeah, I think probably him, but maybe he's taught me some bad habits as well.